Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Kylie if this is your first time here, and today we're doing something a little bit special. As you saw by the title, today I am ranking the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, but I'm also super excited because today is my first ever collaboration on this channel. I have collaborated with Sledgehammer Horror before, but today Ken is coming onto my channel. I'm so pumped. Oh, and one last thing before I call him up, I just wanted to point out that my parents got me this gorgeous new Gryffindor robe. It's so soft and so cozy, it makes me feel like I'm sitting in front of the fire at Hogwarts. Just a very important new addition to my life. Anyways, time to call Ken. Okay, I'm gonna start our Zoom meeting. I've never made a Zoom meeting before. Oh my gosh, you have on your apron and stuff and your decorations. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Wanted to make it a little fun for you.
Is that a little Leatherface back there?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, that's also Leatherface? Oh my gosh, but it's like a cute little plushie. So before we get started with any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre talk, I just really quick want to give Ken a little spotlight, and you can just talk about like your social media, talk about your channel and what it is that you do.
So social media, Sledgehammer Horror. If you go to Instagram, it's Sledgehammer Horror. Facebook, Twitter, all the same thing. Twitter is Sledgehammer Horror, H-O-R. YouTube, Sledgehammer Horror. We do my first horror movie. We talk to guests about the first horror movie that they watched and what it meant to them. You'll be seeing her episode very soon. We also do Didn't See That Coming, where we talk about horror movies with good twists. We do franchise rankings, as well as we do just overall reviews of horror movies. So make sure you're checking it out, Sledgehammer Horror, and I very much appreciate you guys checking it out and watching this. I'm very excited. I've been excited about this all day.
I already mentioned it during my intro, but this is the first collab that I've done on my channel. Like, I've had my dad on before, but that's my dad. Like, this is my first real collab, so I'm really excited.
No, I'm totally amped about it. It's really, really exciting. Thank you again for having me. This is super cool.
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad that you're on my channel. I wanted to apologize, though, because I made you watch the entirety of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. So if you want to kick it off, or I can kick it off, just like your experience going through this franchise, the emotions you felt, I don't know, just what was your experience going through this franchise?
This is one of those franchises that for me, essentially, like really honestly, starts so high and then just nosedives really fast. 8 films as of right now, right? Are we at 8? Yep, yeah. 8 films. We got a new one coming out this year, 2021. I think the big thing for me about the Texas Chainsaw franchise that really gets under my skin is how convoluted the timeline is, how they don't stick with one timeline. They're constantly renaming the characters. They're constantly doing another prequel on top of a prequel. They can't stick to one continuous timeline. It's the most convoluted, crazy timeline I've ever seen in any horror franchise.
Yeah, same. Because I just recently did Halloween, I did Nightmare on Elm Street, I did Friday the 13th, and while Friday the 13th might be really repetitive, the timeline works. Like, for the most part, it all makes sense, but this one, by far the worst that I have seen. Maybe some of the worst horror movies that I've seen as well. It's really quite interesting what came from such an epic, amazing first movie in this franchise. So I guess all of that being said, that's kind of just our experience with this franchise. So now we'll get into our rankings, and as always I start with my bottom, my least favorite, and I work up towards my favorite. Sorry, it's a little awkward. The camera's over there, so but you're over here.
You're totally fine.
Okay.
Totally fine.
Okay. Hi, I'm editing. I just wanted to pop in and let you guys know really quickly, because I didn't mention it, that there will be some spoilers here and there throughout this whole ranking. And like we mentioned, this franchise is really a mess, so I don't think it's too detrimental for you to hear the spoilers we talked about. There really weren't many, I promise. I guess I'll let you kick it off with your number 8, your least favorite.
So my least favorite is Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the Next Generation from 1995. The only real positive about this movie that I like, and I had to dig to really get there, was Heather's death with the mechanical leg. I really thought that was a pretty cool death. But besides that, like, look, this is where you rename them to the Slaughters instead of the Sawyers. I just think that there's so much with the FBI conspiracy angle that goes along with it, how the FBI is in on it. And then, like, at the end with Vilmer, how an airplane just comes out of nowhere and kills him and then flies away. Yeah, like, it's just the worst characters. A lot of recycled storylines from the beginning, a lot of recycled scenes from the first and second one that just seemed this seems like the most unnecessary one to me, because even in these timelines, this one doesn't really fit anywhere. So for me, number 8 is The Next Generation.
So that one is a little bit higher up on my list for very strange reasons. I think it's one of the I'll say it's the strangest Texas Chainsaw Horror movie by far. So I completely understand why it's your least favorite. I totally get that. My least favorite is actually Leatherface from 2017. I don't know, I feel like people kind of feel differently about this one, but this is one that has been largely ignored for the most part, it seems. I just really disliked it because I was super bored, and I also mentioned in my reviews it was kind of just distasteful with how the mentally ill patients were treated, how their characters were written. It was just a very strange and boring movie in my opinion.
We'll talk when I get to that one. Mine's actually a little higher for that one, but I'll explain the reasoning why when we get to that one too.
Yeah, we'll get there when we get there. Okay, I guess that we can move on to our number 7s.
You want to go first this time, or you want me to go?
I guess I'll go first. Sorry, I'm looking at my phone because you're on my computer. My number 7 is for sure going to upset some people. My number 7 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I know, a little surprising. Here's why. It's just, okay. I like campiness. I'm a fan of a lot of 80s movies. So the fact that I didn't like this movie was upsetting also to me. I think the fact that Tobe Hooper was trying to kind of maybe overcorrect from the first one, because the first one was supposed to be a comedy. I think it went a little bit too overboard with the humor for me. It's just not my sense of humor. I think the acting is actually pretty good. I think Bill Moseley as Chop Top was, he was really creepy. I think he did an excellent job. Just overall, yeah, the humor is what kind of really set me off from it, as well as just the fact that a lot of the plot line kind of exactly mirrored the first movie, which was a little bit weird to me, but mainly the humor. So I know that one's a lot higher up on your list, so sorry.
Oh, a lot higher. And we're about to have an Etsy Chainsaw Massacre for you.
Oh my god.
Number 7 for me actually is, he's still going, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 7, the Texas Chainsaw 3D. To me, the only really saving graces of this one was Bill Moseley as Drayton. Like, bringing him in to play Drayton Sawyer, I thought was really cool. Some of the kills were really good. And then Heather and Leatherface's relationship, even though some of the lines were absolutely stupid between those two. But it's the worst backstory to me. Heather was born in the 70s. This takes place in the 2010s, and she's only 20 years old. My wife pointed this out to me. She's like, she should be so much older. And I'm like, you're right. She's 20 when she should be in her 40s. I didn't like the kids that were in the movie. It was just like a bunch of cheaters, and like the 3D effects obviously don't hold up. And even just like some of the special effects are really bad. Like if you watch at the end when the mayor is getting sucked into the chipper, it looks really, really bad. Like Resident Evil for PlayStation bad. Even though I want to like it a lot, I don't like the Leatherface in the carnival scene. Like it's something I want to like when the pig mask person from Saw runs up, is like, want to play a game? Like, I don't know. Like that to me was just like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, so for me, number 7 would be Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Okay, that makes sense. I feel like I could totally agree with anyone wherever they place like anything on their list for this franchise, just because it's so weird. Because I actually ended up liking that movie, more like a guilty pleasure for sure. And I didn't even mention in my review how off the timeline was, because Heather should be like 40. I think they filmed that movie in 2011, but it came out in 2013. But to me, it felt like it took place in 2002 or something, just based on like the wardrobe and stuff. It was so funky. It was so weird. Trey Songz was in the movie. I mean, so weird. So completely understand. For number 6, do you want to go first?
Yep, I'll go first this time.
Okay.
I'm going with the first Leatherface, not Texas Chainsaw first. Leatherface, which was Texas Chainsaw 3 from 1990. Benny was awesome. I thought he was a great character. Now, this is kind of weird. Leatherface and his daughter, the execution of those two, I thought was really, really good. The way that she was this evil little girl. And Tex, when Tex gets lit on fire, I thought that was really cool. But Leatherface looks stupid in this movie. Like, I don't like the way he looks. And the idea that he had a daughter, to me, I guess really was like, because I'm cool with murder and blood and guts, but I can't handle rape. It's something that's always really bothered me. And they really insinuate in this movie that Leatherface is a rapist. And Leatherface to me was always just like this mentally challenged person who was where he was because of the constant abuse from his family. And I just don't think that someone with a 7-year-old's mentality would have the ability to rape women and procreate. So the execution of him and his daughter was great, but the idea of him and his daughter really bothered me. A whole new family this time. They redid the whole storyline, and I think this was actually the most boring of the bunch. This is the one where I was constantly checking, pushing triangle on my PlayStation to see how much longer I had left in this one. So I gotta go Leatherface for me for number 6.
That's actually my number 6 too, and for a lot of the same reasons. It was so boring to me. I was having the worst time trying to pay attention to that movie. Yeah, rape is also something that I cannot handle in movies whatsoever.
Even the Rob Zombie Halloween, like the director's cut of that one, it's got a very graphic rape scene in that one, and it's something that I can't. I'm with you. It's something that it's weird. I guess it speaks to our character of, I can watch that guy get his balls, ass, and face blown off, but you can't rape a woman. I can't handle it. So I get it. It's just, you might as well kill her because you just ruined her for the rest of forever. It's worse than death to me. It's now you got to live with this forever, and it's the worst possible thing a woman or man could deal with. So I'm glad that you're on the same page as me with that.
I agree. I think the reason why it's so just grating is because it's almost always not necessary unless it's super integral to the plot, which the only movie that I can really think of where it is like Contracted, which was just a disgusting movie about that woman that got date raped and then had that really weird STD that turned her into a zombie. Strange movie. So yeah, anyway, all of that being said, perhaps let's move on. let's maybe move on to our number 5. My number 5 was Texas Chainsaw: The Beginning. So that was the prequel sequel that came out in 2006. It was the prequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake. So
now that we got that established.
Yeah, sorry. It's like we said, I mean, the timeline for all of this is just such a mess, and anyways, you get it. So for the life of me, I can't really remember the plot of that one. I remember being excited to watch it because I did like the remake from 2003, and I just thought that the reasoning and some of the exposition that we got and the backstory that we got for the family was just really underwhelming. I thought the movie was just really gore heavy. I actually do recommend it to my audience that likes gore, because if you don't need much of a plot, like, I think you'd like the movie because it was fine. It had a lot of gore that was pretty good. It wasn't the type of movie for me. So yeah, fell at number 5.
Well, number 5 for me is actually Texas Chainsaw Massacre number 5, the remake from 2003. A lot of people have this higher on their list. For me, like, one of the best cinematic scenes I've ever seen is in this movie when the hitchhiker shoots herself and then the camera goes through the hole in her head. Like, I thought that was super awesome, like the cinematography of that. But when I watch a horror movie remake, one of my favorite horror movie remakes to come out in the last 5 years actually was the Child's Play remake. When I go into a horror movie remake, I want it to be completely different than the original. I've already seen the original. So if you're going to take it and make it your own, do that. And I feel like a lot of this was unimaginative. They had a lot of recycled scenes from the original, a lot of chase scenes in this one. Now they're the Hewitt family rather than the Sawyer family. That's something that's really bothered me. Could you imagine in every other Halloween or every other Nightmare or every other Friday, if it was Jason Voorhees and then Jason Miller and then Michael Voorhees, I don't like the constant renaming of these characters. But Arlie Ermey, however you say his last name, is awesome in this movie. God rest his soul. Another really great scene in this movie is when Leatherface has that kid Kemper, when he has his face on and he's chasing after Morgan. That is awesome. And then, or not Morgan. Morgan's the one that gets chainsawed through the crotch.
Right.
Which is such a great scene too. But when you see Leatherface with Kemper's face on him and she looks at him and she's Jessica Biel, it's just like, whoa, that's my dude's face. I thought that was a really cool scene too. So, and I do want to stress that now from here on, like 5 up for me are all at least 5, 4, and 3 are at least fun watches for me. I wouldn't mind watching these ones again. The ones below this, I would be fine if I never seen them again. But from here on, they're at least watchable films to me.
I agree. Yeah, my top 4 are definitely ones that I wouldn't mind rewatching, and some of them are a little questionable for sure, and we'll get there. But anyways, did I go first last time or did you?
Yeah, we're on number 4 now, so I will go. Okay. Mine is part 8. Leatherface is not number 4.
Really?
This one I have right in the middle for a reason, because it's the one, like you said, that I don't remember a lot of positive or negative about, even on a rewatch. It's one of those ones that I have to put right in the middle because that's what it is to me. It's just mid-ground. I do love the diner massacre. I thought that was a lot of fun. The curb stomp kill was really cool. I thought it was crazy when the cop had the girl and, he's got her on her knees and she's like, oh, you're just some old man crying over some dumb dead girl. Then he just shoots her and the smoke's coming out of her mouth. Like, I thought that was cool. Again, we go back to a whole nother prequel. And I think to me, the biggest problem with this movie, and this may be me splitting hairs here, but the fact that they had the character of Bud and they didn't make him Leatherface. I mean, I get they're trying to throw that curveball in there, but Bud was the perfect character because I can't remember the kid's name that ended up being Leatherface. But this is supposed to be a direct prequel, you're going to tell me that the Leatherface from the 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre at one point was this kid who was very articulate, very well-spoken, very smart, and then just getting shot in the face turns him into this the mentality of a child type guy, when you had Bud, who was the perfect fit. Sometimes if it's not broken, don't fix it. If something makes too much sense, let it make sense. You don't have to try to throw it all. So that's the biggest problem with this movie. Bud died. I was like, what are we doing here? It looked just like him. That was the perfect idea. But I do want to stress on something you said, the way that they portrayed some of the kids in the mental institution. Some of them were just pure evil rather than had mental issues, like the girl that was making the girl eat the rat.
Yeah, that's what I said in my review. Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
To me, that's not a mental disability. That's pure evil. And pure evil is not a mental disability. She should not have been in a mental institution. She should have been in a juvenile detention center, or even close enough to be in jail, actually, because doing stuff like that is not, again, sure, that could be a cause of a mental disability, but the way it's portrayed in this movie is not a mental disability. It's just pure evil. They're in the diner and they're like, oh, time to go, and they stab the guy in the neck. Like, they know what they're doing. They deliberately want to be evil. That's not a mental disability to me. That's just evil being set out of somebody's body. So there it is. Leatherface for me.
I'm glad that you brought a lot of that up, because during my review, which came out last week, I kind of just rambled about it. I didn't really get very in-depth with the movie, so I'm glad that you put that all out there. I do agree. I do like the reasoning why Leatherface looks the way that he does. I thought that the plot point was really interesting with the police officer shooting him in the face. That was like a wow moment for me. Unfortunately, I just didn't really have any other wow moments in that film. So
I'm like, I get it, like him looking like that because of the shot, but I don't think that would make him the way that he was.
No.
Like with the mental, that shot would not bring him down that far. And just my opinion, to me, that was them trying to throw you their curveball. Like, you have this perfect character in Bud, but let's switch it up a little bit and take a hard right turn here. So just unnecessary twist.
I agree. Okay, I'll move on to my number 4. Okay. My number 4 is Texas Chainsaw: The Next Generation. It's a terrible, weird movie. Yes, Oh wait, oh my gosh, wait, that was your last one, right? Was that not your number 8?
Yeah, that was my number 8.
Okay, so ours are just switched. That is so funny. Mine's Next Generation. It's literally just because it's such a guilty pleasure. I thought it was so dumb that it was just enjoyable. And the fact that Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey star in the movie, and they are Oscar-winning actors, I think it's hilarious. I think it's so funny. And so just to see them both kind of overacting some of their worst performances, and to think of just the places that they would go, and this was kind of their beginning, I think it's hilarious. So I have a ton of enjoyment watching the movie.
Like, they filmed this movie and they shelved it because it was really, really bad.
Right.
And Renee Zellweger was in Jerry Maguire. That blew up huge, and they were like, we need to release this now. And Matthew McConaughey and his agent were like, no, and they tried to block them from releasing this movie. Right. It's just, to me, it's so crazy that without Jerry Maguire, this movie would have never been released. They would have shelved it forever because that's how much that the studio didn't like it at first.
Right. So did it not, I did do some research on that. Did it not get released until like 2 years later or something?
2 or 3 years later. Actually under a different name. I think the first name was The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then they renamed it The Next Generation. And I believe it's the DVD or Blu-ray still has the title card, The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's amazing to me that much of it was that hated that they did that. That's just crazy to me.
I know. I mean, I get it though. The movie is a mess. So I'm gonna move on to my number 3, and my number 3 is Texas Chainsaw 3D, and for pretty similar reasons. It's just more of a guilty pleasure. I'm a big fan of Alexandra Daddario, so I just think it's funny to see her in this. All the characters, like you mentioned, are super unlikable. The story is not great. It's not consistent at all with the timeline. It doesn't make any sense. So it's just a guilty pleasure. I think it's just funny. It's my version of campiness that I enjoy. I guess that's kind of my sense of humor, that makes sense. And definitely not in line with like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum of campiness, I would say, in a way that it's like not self-aware, I guess.
No, I get that. My number 3 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning. As much as I'm always against them changing a character, I like in this one how Thomas Hewitt, who is Leatherface, is just evil. He doesn't have mental disability. He's just an evil person. I like how they did that. When Leatherface hooks the girl through the door, I thought that was a really cool scene. When Holden's laying on the floor and Leatherface chainsaws through him and goes up through him, I thought that was really cool. And I even wrote down here, prequel, ugh, because the amount of prequels that they have here. This is the most bland, and this is like the 4th around the table dinner scene that we've had. So I'm gonna go with number 3 being Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning.
The table scene, as you mentioned, was one of the reasons why it's a little bit lower on my list. I just felt that for it being a prequel, it made sense why they would have a lot of those kind of recycled elements like the dinner scene and such. I just wish that they'd done something a little bit more original, because it does make sense in terms of the fact that it's a prequel, but in terms of the timeline of the franchise, it was the 6th movie, right? So it just, everything felt really recycled to me. Do you want to kick it off with our number 2?
Number 2 for me is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I think this is horror comedy done well. I think this is the perfect middle ground of horror comedy. It's not as slapsticky as, say, Army of Darkness, but it's around like the Evil Dead 2 type of horror comedy to me. Dennis Hopper is Lefty. I'm a huge Dennis Hopper fan. Obviously, Chop Top is amazing. I love when Lefty finds Franklin's body still in the wheelchair. I like the corpse of Frank from part 1. I do like that a lot. It's sex or the saw. You can't have both. I love that line. Then the chainsaw fight that Lefty and him have. The Leatherface love story, like where he's going at the girl's crotch with the chainsaw. And she's like, you know how to use that? Like that to me was just very, very uncomfortable.
Okay, good.
Yeah, a lot of the recycled scenes, even like with Grandpa, the dinner scene in this one is almost exactly recycled. Here's another scene that bothers me in this one. I'm going to get a little winded here, but Drayton in part 1 says he can't stomach killing. I can't do killing. And yet in this one, he tries to kill Stretch when Grandpa can't do it. It's like in the first one, he talks about, I can't do this. I ain't the one that does the killing. The boys do the killing. But he tries to kill her when Grandpa can't do it. So that's, again, continuity that really bothers me. And the biggest problem to me in this one is at the very end when Stretch has defeated everybody and she's doing the Leatherface dance up on the mountain. It's like, what? Why would you do that? Like that, even in the Texas Chainsaw world, that doesn't make any sense. Like she just defeated these people that were trying to kill her and she's doing a chainsaw dance up on a mountain? Like what? What are you doing, Stretch? Like that. So to me, that's the biggest problem is the Stretch dance on the mountain. That really bummed me out.
I think my best guess for why they would do something like that with her character is the fact that in the first one, Sally is riding away on the back of this truck just drenched in blood and she's laughing hysterically. So obviously just irrevocably changed by what just happened to her. I think that they were maybe trying to do something like that with Stretch and now she's crazy because she went through it too.
I mean, I guess I could see that.
I guess that's my best guess. I don't know, but it was super weird. A lot of that was just a little bit misguided to me. Obviously, it's a little lower on my list. So, anyways,
that's why these are so much fun to do. If we had the same list, it'd be boring.
Exactly.
I love the fact that we have different. Our lists are completely different, with the exception of number 1, which we both now know. Well, you haven't done your number 2 yet, so I can't say that. But
okay. So my number 2 is the remake. I think I compared it to all of the other movies in the franchise, and I think that just plot-wise, narratively, the characters, I think that it was just one of the most well-constructed movies in the franchise. I think that just despite having to rely on copying old scenes and stuff, it was just still the most well-put-together movie. I think maybe one of the most well-acted ones, just in comparison to the rest of the garbage, frankly, that we got with this franchise. It's one that I think I can rewatch. It's a little bit too gritty for me at times, but it's just because I'm not really a gore hound. But it was one of my favorite ones in the franchise, obviously. What is your number? Oh wait, no, we just did your number 2. All right, should we just move on, I guess, to our number one?
Which we both know what it is, but obviously the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from '74. Now, one of the pros about this movie that people that haven't watched it ever or in a long time might not know, this movie is not by any stretch of the imagination a bloody or gory film. And it's one of these movies that always gets labeled as such. It's always labeled as this bloody or gory film, and it really isn't. There's no blood or gore in this movie to a high extent. The genuine character relationships in this, like you feel like they're all really, really good friends. Sally is the absolute scream queen when she's there at the dinner table. I love the Psycho family in this one that's done so well. Every single one of them has their place and they know their place. The art design, like you watch the behind the scenes on this, they had the art designer would go and find real bones and come put them together to make stuff. And I think out of all the Texas movies, this one has the best ending, with Leatherface doing the pissed off dance because he couldn't get Sally and she's riding away. For the negatives on this movie, for me though, it does have a very slow first act. The dinner scene with her screaming does get look, that was like just 15 minutes of her just screaming, just like Grandpa kill her already. She's already done anyway. The one thing is when she jumps out the window, when Sally jumps out the window, that is so obviously a stunt double wearing a wig. That's one of those ones that just really bothers me. But Psycho to me started the slasher, but this really took the slasher craze and really made it what it could be. Psycho's more of the slow burn, psychological slasher, but this really was the in-your-face slasher, and it scared so many people when it came out because it was based on Ed Gein, obviously, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not based on a true story, but it says it is at the beginning. So a lot of people were like, oh man, this is based on a true story. That's terrifying. So there's so much to love about this movie that you can deal with the negatives because the positives are so good.
I agree, and I feel like you just summed it up so well. That was all very well said. I don't have much to contribute. So I guess I'll ask you a question. I think part of what makes it so great, especially upon rewatch, watching it now almost 50 years later, the film has this grittiness to it, because it was a low budget movie for the 70s, and obviously filmed on actual film and whatnot, and it just looks very grainy, gritty. It's very experimental. Especially, I'm not a huge fan of her screaming for 15 minutes at the dinner table, but I will say that the cinematography is so weird that it's kind of mesmerizing. We have those weird up close shots on her eyes and stuff. You don't really know what's going on. It's just the movie just bleeds insanity. And so my question for you after that rambling, do you think that movies now would ever really be able to capture that? Because so much of what we do now is so high def and 4K and even with filters and stuff. Do you think we'll ever be able to capture that in horror again?
I think that when a movie is done right, it is. But here's the difference. When you want to get that type of real gritty movie, you have to go with your low budget, almost fan-made type movies. Because, and this isn't by no fault, the writers, directors, producers, studios don't want to do that anymore. And these big studios that are producing these big budget movies are saying, you're going to do it our way because we're paying for this. So it gets taken out of their hands a lot of the time. But you look at movies right now, like 1BR. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes.
That was a fantastically done movie. And it has that graininess, that grittiness. And even if you go to fan-made, I love the Never Hike series.
Oh, me too.
I think those are great. And I know that you are a very big fan of Never Hike Alone.
Yep.
I do know that. We've talked about that. And you have that graininess and that grittiness because these people, especially with fan-made films, when they're making films of franchises like that we grew up with and we love, they're not doing it for money. They're doing it for their love of the franchise, their love of these characters. So they're going to do it the right way. They're not big money executives, big suits that are like, well, we're going to, rape this so we can get money. They're doing it for their absolute love of the franchise. So to me, fan-made films right now are my favorite films out there because they remind me, I'm a little older than you, I'm showing my age here, but they remind me of going to the theater to see Friday the 13th Part 7. That's what I think of when I see these films, and they're doing it the right way. Never Hike does a great job. Vengeance, Friday the 13th Vengeance, is super awesome. It follows the story of Jason Voorhees' father, Elias. I don't want to give too much away, but they got a Vengeance 2 coming out soon. You guys can check that out on YouTube. Part 1 is on there as well. Kylie, if you haven't seen it, I would strongly recommend it because Vengeance is a very good Friday the 13th fan film as well. To me, when you're asking about that grittiness, and when it comes to a studio film, I don't think we'll ever get that grittiness again. But when it comes to the fan made and the low budget films that we're seeing that are being released right now and you can Indiegogo support, I think that they do a great job in capturing what we grew up loving.
Oh, follow up. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was not a studio film, obviously. It was an independent, low budget, as was the first Halloween movie. Do you think that studios have ever really successfully produced kind of a grittier, you know, film in such the way that we're talking about?
Maybe Saw. You know, like the first Saw,
okay.
you know, that's pretty gritty and nasty, but they had to fight with the studio to get the movie made the way they wanted to make it. So these studios can do the right things when the idea is done right. You know, one of my favorite horror films ever is Cabin in the Woods, and that's a very polished horror film. Where it's polished, the idea is so brilliant that you can look past the super good icing on it to get to that. I've always been a bigger fan of the lower rated B movies. Then like you said, sometimes we get huge cult classics like Texas Chainsaw, Halloween, Evil Dead is another one. You know, Sam Raimi made that in college. So a lot of these films, they gain that. And that's what I don't understand where studios come in. I've never met someone that would rather watch Texas Chainsaw 3 over Texas Chainsaw. You know, when these studios get in and start getting their hands on it, you can tell that they're making the changes that people don't want to see, especially people that are fans of the first one. To answer your question, you know, very rare does a studio make a real gritty horror movie. The Collector was a good one. Saw was a good one, but very, very, very few and far between. Well,
this has been a really good discussion. I'm glad that we chatted a little bit beyond our rankings. Just one last time, you can find him. This is Sledgehammer Horror, aka Ken, aka one of the best up-and-coming horror channels on YouTube.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, of course. Any parting words? Anything else that you'd like to say?
I would love to work with you again. You guys could check out her interview on my channel and find out where horror started for her. That'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. I don't know when this will be released, but I'm very excited for that because we had a lot of fun with that. Hopefully we'll have her back on my channel again for a Didn't See That Coming episode. I think we could have a lot of fun with that. And I just hope you guys had as much fun doing this as I did. And it's something that, like I said, I've been excited about this since we talked about it. This is my first time doing a franchise ranking on someone else's channel. So to be able to come on and someone I respect and I enjoy and I'm a fan of, thank you again so much for having me.
Oh, cool. Oh my gosh. You just talked me up for like 2 minutes. Thank you. It's been so good having you on, so I guess we'll say goodbye now and I'll do my outro. But thank you so much for being on.
Oh, no problem. Anytime. Best of luck. I wish you nothing but the best of success here in 2021.
You too. Okay, everybody go subscribe. His channel's linked down below, so go do it right now. Okay, bye. Okay, so that was super fun. I am so glad that he was able to come on today. Ken, thank you one more time if you're watching this. I hope that you enjoyed our ranking of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. If you'd like to follow me or him on social media, all of that will be linked down below. Also my Patreon, my vlog channel, that'll be linked down below as well. But other than that, I really hope that you enjoyed this collaboration. Let me know if you'd like to see more collabs on my channel. That was super fun and it went pretty well. I thought it might be kind of weird doing it via Zoom, but it was actually really enjoyable and really cool. That's all from me today. I hope that you enjoyed this video and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye! Aha! You thought that the video was over. Nay, nay. I also want to give a big shout out to my new patrons, Emily and Joanna. Emily, I see you. You've commented on a lot of my videos. You've been around for a while. Joanna, you're one of my day ones. I absolutely love you. So again, a huge thank you for just going the extra mile to support me. It means so much. And with that, this is actually the end of the video. Okay, bye!